I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown, a bonus episode here on this week. Just a few days ago, we talked about the Oscar shortlist, some of the snubs and surprises because of that, and based on that shortlist that we got, now going to talk about some of the below-the-line categories that those affected. Today, on this episode, talk about the kind of design categories: production design, costume design, and makeup and hairstyling, and then talk about some of the other categories in the future, like the score and music type categories, and then editing and VFX and international film. So if you're new to the channel, that's what I do every single week. This is our 10th season of predicting the Oscars. Not only do we do the high level stuff, but also some of the smaller categories and do deep dives on them, which is exactly what this episode is. And these are the episodes I absolutely love. These are for the hardcore fans that want to hear 20 minutes on the best makeup and hairstyling category and the nitty-gritty little bits, because you can kind of anguish yourself over what's going to get nominated for best supporting actor in the acting categories. But in terms of getting an overall great nomination, it's taking the same level of care that you do for the acting categories as you do for the technical categories. That's why these videos are so important. That's what makes us unique. That's what not a lot of other people here on YouTube do. But we have now here for our 10th season. So if you appreciate the videos, please feel free to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out on some of these double week episodes. And also, you can feel free to comment below. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your predictions. I always love to hear that, to kind of go back and forth, because at the end of the day, this is for you to help make your own predictions. I'm going to give my thoughts, my analysis, my stats as to what I predict, but it's ultimately to help you kind of understand the whole landscape and then make your predictions for what you feel comfortable with. I'm not telling you what will get predicted. I'm telling you what I think is going to get predicted. That's the difference. But this is a long video. If you want to hear my thoughts on an individual category or an individual film within a category, feel free to use the timestamps in the description below. But without further ado, I'm going to start off with the best costume design category, starting off with my first prediction, which is going to go to Frankenstein. This is a film that has really been rising in recent weeks. I think it's a strong top 5 Best Picture contender. And even if it wasn't a Best Picture contender, it would kind of get nominated off the back of a lot of these technical categories. So things like production design and costume design. And the past 2 Guillermo del Toro films that were nominated for Best Picture and in contention, The Shape of Water and Nightmare Alley, both also got nominated here for costume design. It's a classic kind of a costume design, a pick, where it has lots of costumes, period set. So you have these big extravagant dresses from something like a Mia Goth's character, to the suits of something like Oscar Isaac's character, and then some of the fantastical elements with Frankenstein's monster. So very much a classic nominee, a Best Picture, likely movie, and a filmmaker who's known for getting costume design nominations here. Also got that kind of perfect period that they like of the high society of this era. It really is just like a perfect slam dunk kind of a nomination here. I'd be surprised if it doesn't get in. Then my second pick, I went with Sinners. This is from legendary costume designer Ruth E. Carter, who got nominated for the previous 2 Ryan Coogler films in Black Panther and Black Panther Wakanda Forever, and then won for those movies. So not only nominated, but then won. She is someone who's been nominated and won multiple times, so intense amount of appreciation here. I bring that up only because being a past nominee is really crucial for this category. With a lot of the technical categories, but particularly for something like costume design or for score, they really like to nominate past nominees. As a matter of fact, I went over through the past 10 years, and there's an average of 3.8 out of 5 of the nominees each and every year over the past 10 years that are past nominees in this category. That is to say, if you want to round up, 4 out of the 5 nominees are past nominees. And that pretty much is consistent every single year. That was the notable part for me. Is it averaged out to 3.8 out of 5, but it wasn't a situation where, one year you get 1 out of 5 and 1 year you get 5 out of 5. No, it was actually pretty much every single year 4 out of 5, with the occasional 3 and the occasional 5. In the past 10 years, there's only been 1 year in which all 5 of the nominees were past nominees, and the lowest it's ever been was 2 out of 5. It's almost pretty consistently every single year, exactly 4 out of the 5 nominees in this category I've been nominated in the past before, have been won in the past. So this branch likes to kind of appreciate the great ones, the ones that are really well appreciated. Your Jenny Bevins, your Jacqueline Durans, your Jacqueline Wests, your Colleen Atwoods, your Mary Zofres, your Sandy Powells. And Ruthie Carter, I think, is in that similar trajectory, in that similar kind of a path, going back all the way to Amistad, getting nominated, to then more recently winning for something like Wakanda Forever, which was a surprise win in my mind. I wasn't even sure she was going to get nominated. So the fact that that's all lining up, and then you have Sinners, which is a period movie that has men and women, so suits and dresses, variety there, a well-liked movie generally. It's just got everything on paper. I really do think Sinners is going to get nominated here for Best Costume Design. And then my third pick, I went with Wicked for Good. This is from costume designer Paul Tazewell, who won just last year for this film. And while I don't think he's going to win again this year, I do think he will get nominated. I think he does incredible work again here for Wicked for Good, whether it be the dresses of Glinda or Elphaba, which are always great, but then the new additions of more featuring of the Munchkins, and then also the Tin Man and the Scarecrow, or the iconic recreation of Dorothy's dress, or her slippers that you don't necessarily think about, but are integral to this film and the costume designing of this film. Again, he is a past winner and past nominee, so I feel comfortable kind of including him here. We mentioned earlier in the week how Wicked did very well in terms of a lot of mentions at the shortlist, so I do think that this is a movie that still could compete for Best Picture, that will get multiple nominations. I think some people took it out of their predictions entirely, but based on the shortlist, based on it surprising, getting in for cinematography, or even something like score, I would say, or casting, I do think that this is definitely a consideration, and it's not dead on arrival. It's not completely out of the Oscar conversation. It may not get in for Best Picture, but it will at least be appreciated in some of these technical categories, and everything on paper makes sense for this film to be in consideration. The last thing that I want to mention too with this film is that it's a kind of sci-fi fantasy movie, and this branch really loves period films. But every year for the past few years, we've seen at least one of the sci-fi fantasies, whether that be Dune in 2021, the first one, or Barbie, fantastic-esque, or the same thing. Here you could say Poor Things, definitely a sci-fi fantasy. Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. Last year with Wicked. They like the period because it's a sense of recreating something that exists. But when you're able to create a world and create new costumes like Wicked has, there is an appreciation there. So got into the Costume Designers Guild for the fantasy category, and I looked at my predictions and I went, okay, it's mostly period, it's very period heavy. Let's put in a fantasy, let's put in a bit of a creation of the costume setting here. And I thought Wicked just felt the most in that way. So it's kind of a diverse and different kind of a nomination as well, so it stands out amongst the other nominees. Wicked does have a lot of things going for it, even if it doesn't get nominated for Best Picture, even if it disappoints a bit, it should pick up some of these nominations like VFX or costume design, or maybe production design too. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Then my fourth pick, I went with Hamnet, which is very similar to my first two picks. Likely Best Picture movie, contender, top 5 contender at Best Picture. And then also is a period film. It doesn't have as much expansive costumes as the first two picks, where you think of really the dress only being Jessie Buckley's kind of flowing dress. And you have a lot of costumes, particularly near the end of the film, but it's a little bit more of a limited cast. So it's not as flashy or a lot of costumes in that sense. But it is a period film, and it is a Best Picture contender. That maybe should be enough just to be in consideration. And they love this time period, this branch does. It'd be one thing if it was a period piece from the 70s, which they don't totally love. But when you talk about, the 19th century, or even earlier in this case, people really do love the costumes and everything that kind of comes with that period and that recreation, because of how totally different it is. It's not jeans and a t-shirt. It's completely different, and the research that is involved in recreating that is still always well appreciated. The one reason why it's actually so low down here is that this is actually from a first-time nominee. And now you may mention, Connor, you just said 4 of the 5 nominees have to be from past nominees. You've included Frankenstein, you've included Hamnet. Why is that the case? Well, you still want to be flexible with the rules. You don't want to necessarily go 1 out of 5 or 2 out of 5. If every single year is 4 out of 5, you can go with 3 or you can go with 4. That's fine as well. I remember the 2023 year, I kind of stupidly, looking back on my predictions, not predicted Oppenheimer for Best Costume Design because I'd already had Holly Waddington for Poor Things in, and Oppenheimer ended up getting nominated for costumes, and I looked like a fool. And that was a year where most years it was 4 out of 5, but that year it was 3 out of 5. So don't be kind of like what I have been in the past, kind of a slave to the rules and the stats. I'm not going to go with 2 out of 5, for example, but I am going to go with at least 3 out of 5. Didn't want to stop that. In the same way, Poor Things and Oppenheimer were 2 strong Best Picture contenders that got in for costumes, that had period costumes. I look at Hamnet and Frankenstein, period costumes, strong Best Picture contenders. I don't want to pick one or the other, even when I think both of them can definitely get nominated, and I want to include it here. So it may be a little bit of an outlier year where I think 3 out of the 5 nominees will be past nominees, but I didn't want to go as low as 1 or as 2. So ultimately still go with Hamnet, because aside from that one bit, every other bit, period, well-liked, male, female costumes, a distinct period that they like, lots of people, particularly near the end of the film, all those things really kind of went in its favor. And then with my 5th pick, I went with One Battle After Another. And this was a movie that I didn't initially predict in my costumes prediction, but after I saw some contenders like Kiss of a Spider Woman or Testament of Anne Leen not show up at the Costume Designers Guild, I figured, what, why not One Battle After Another? It's got a lot of good things on paper. First off, I always love over-indexing in international films and in Best Picture contenders. Every year, whether it be The Power of the Dog or Everything Everywhere All at Once or Oppenheimer, people get surprised. Oh, it shows up here, it shows up there, because they think of them as like director, picture, acting, that they therefore can't compete in these smaller categories, but why not? These branches, like this movie too. If every other branch likes the movie, why wouldn't this branch like the movie as well? Now, there are some downsides to it. It's a contemporary film. Contemporary films almost never get nominated for Best Costume Design. But in my mind, that's the only thing kind of going against it. When I think about the costumes, I think about the kind of iconic robe that Leonardo DiCaprio's character is wearing, or his big black sunglasses, or kind of the sensei, Benicio del Toro, in his white pants and his garb, or Sean Penn in his military outfits, or Jason Finney with a leather jacket and a skirt. It is these kind of small iconic moments and costume decisions within the film. Costume designer is also Colleen Atwood. Colleen Atwood is an absolute legend costume designer. Nominated 12 times, won 4 times. Now, she hasn't been nominated in about 10 years, so there's a little bit of concern there that she will get nominated this year. But it does have notable costumes. It is from a past nominee. And also, maybe the most important reason why I wanted to include it here is that I don't have it for Best Production Design. And you may say, Connor, why is the costume design category helping you predict production design? And I'll explain it to you. For a lot of people, and I say this every year, but it's worth repeating, a lot of people, they think production design and costume design are the same category. And they go the exact same predictions for costume design as they do for production design. When in reality, that's actually really wrong. In reality, most years, there's only 2 or 3 films that overlap, that get nominations in both categories. Just take a look at last year, for example. A movie like The Brutalist will get nominated for production design, but then not get nominated for costume design. There are certain movies that kind of are period piece, let's say, and lean a little bit more into one category or another. Of course, there's overlap. Wicked won both categories just last year, but there is more distinction between the 2 categories than people think, and people make that same mistake every single year. So I wanted to include a movie here instead of something like a Marty Supreme, a movie that I had in just for costume design and not for production design, that they're their own branch, that they like to do something a little bit differently. And the fact that there was an overlap in many ways was a good sign for me. And I want you to consider that in your predictions as well. Where is there overlap? Where is there not overlap? And does that make sense for your predictions? Keep that in mind. I want to over-index in past winners and past nominees and in a strong, well-liked movie. Even though it's contemporary, I think it kind of fits well within my overall predictions. So right now I do have One Battle After Another. Then some possible contenders. I went with Marty Supreme, a period piece, so it definitely has a benefit of that. A potential top 5 Best Picture contender, so it fits very similarly to something like Hamnet or Frankenstein. But I don't think is as strong as a Best Picture contender as those 2 movies. Also, this movie is a first-time nominee, which I don't love. Also, those 2 movies are earlier on in history, and this branch likes the really early on in history period pieces. They don't love 40s and 50s period pieces necessarily. You look at something like The Brutalist last year, didn't get in for costume design, even though it was in kind of the 40s, 50s. And that's a really well-liked movie that was a period movie, but its costumes weren't super flashy. I think similarly with Marty Supreme, it's more of a production design feat than it is a costume design feat. That being said, it should be a consideration without a doubt. And then my other possible contender, I went with Hedda. This showed up here at the Costume Designers Guild, which kind of put it on my radar. Also, Hedda showed up at a score long list at the Oscars, so there is a general appreciation that people are seeing the movie and generally appreciating it. Also, Tessa Thompson got nominated at the Golden Globes, so she'll be there, and it will be kind of prominent in that sense. And the movie has great costumes and elegant dresses. The concern ultimately is that it's from a costume designer who's never been nominated before, so it doesn't have that benefit. Usually when we see one-off type of nominees, because I do think this is Hedda's probably only chance at a nomination, when we see those types of nominees, they're usually from, legendary costume designers. So when we see someone like a Cyrano get nominated, well, that's from Jacqueline Duran and Massimo Cantini-Perini, both past nominees. Or when we see a Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris, that's from Jenny Bevan, who's a legendary costume designer, right? That's not really the case here with Hedda. That being said, if they want kind of a passion pick, a pick that may not get any other nominations but has great craft, even if they don't love the movie, that doesn't really matter for this branch. Great, elegant dresses, female-centric for sure, but definitely high production value and kind of costume design budget and value, and they look great and they're very photographed really great. So if there's a lot of passion for this film and there's no kind of clear number 5, it's one battle after another or Marty Supreme, right? They may want to go with a movie that no one else picks and go here with Hedda. Now let's talk about the production design category. My predictions for that category, with my first one going to go to Frankenstein. And we talked about how I think Frankenstein is going to be a technical marvel already and get a lot of nominations. But even if Frankenstein completely, tanks and disappoints on Oscar nominations morning, it should get in at least for this category. The two categories that Guillermo del Toro films do the best in are cinematography and production design. And we talked about that video, how the production design category and the cinematography category should have some overlap, and we do definitely have a lot of overlap here, including with Frankenstein, so it felt comfortable on that side. And then when you think of Del Toro's past movies, whether that be Nightmare Alley got nominated, whether you think of Shape of Water, which won, Pan's Labyrinth, which won, there's a strong connection with Del Toro's films in the production design category. And now you have a period piece film with lots of real built sets and lots of different locations. I think the production designers will absolutely love this film and should kind of cruise to a nomination. My next prediction, I went with Sinners. This is a movie that I don't see a lot of people even have in their top 5, and yet I have it at my number 2, and I'm confused as to why people don't think it's going to get in. It checks all of my boxes. I think it's going to get nominated for cinematography. We see an overlap with there. It's from a past nominee, and Hannah Beachler, who actually won for Black Panther. That's notable. When I think about, Best Picture movie, that's another one. When I think about past, generally nominated films, I think about production design films that have distinct locations, so that when you think of Oppenheimer, you think of, they built a town in Los Alamos. When I think of even something like Barbie, you think of the kind of Barbie land that they've created. Last year, with the Vatican recreation in Conclave, I think similarly here with Sinners and the Juke Joint. That is a big individual location that's used constantly throughout the film, that they built large parts of, and is a real location, and that's an appreciation from the production design side of things. And then even the beginning of the film, the town, which they built and created. We've seen past nominees like Killers of the Flower Moon or Oppenheimer get nominated for that same aspect. So frankly, I'd be surprised if Sinners doesn't get nominated here. It checks a lot of the boxes that I'm looking for. I think maybe people have it in their 4th or 5th spot because there's lots of kind of strong contenders here, but I feel good about Sinners as generally an Oscar contender, especially how it's getting a lot of appreciation from the critics. It's not falling away. It's been showing up at all the right places. I think it will kind of cruise to at least a nomination here because it has that distinct, iconic period recreation, which they like, but also distinct location of that juke joint, which is a physical location. You remember the film, you think about the production design, you think about the juke joint. Then my third pick, I went with Marty Supreme, and this is from legendary production designer Jack Fisk, who's been working with Terrence Malick and Brian De Palma since the 70s. Had never won before, but nominated multiple times, most recently for Killers of the Flower Moon. Again, here he recreates a period, this time 50s New York, and does so really well. A little bit of concern on my side because I've seen the film now, and there's a lot of tight close-ups, so you actually don't get to see the background necessarily. But not only does he create New York, he also creates Japan at this time. He also creates London. Lots of kind of globe-trotting aspects within the film in terms of many different locations and realistically kind of bringing them to life. he's a legendary production designer in a movie that I expect to be well nominated and get in for Best Picture. So generally just well appreciated. And the fact that they built a lot of these real locations and used extras and things like that, I think adds to the authenticity of the film. And I think will be appreciated by this branch most definitely. And then my fourth pick, I went with Hamnet. And this is a movie that isn't as big of a scale as something like Marty Supreme, not as many locations, but the locations they do have are well done, whether it be, most notably, I would say, the Globe Theatre that's built at the end there and the recreation of that there, or even some of the production design elements of the kind of Stratford countryside home or the town that they live in. Feels period authentic, feels real, feels lived in. I think I also have it in, I do have it in for Best Cinematography, and I think that collaboration there kind of do wonders for each other in terms of adding that sense of authenticity and transportive feeling of the film. And this is from production designer Fiona Crombie, who isn't as much of a legend as someone like a Jack Fisk, but has been nominated before for 2018's The Favourite, so that is a strong sign of support there. It's not as important as it is for something like costume designer to be a past nominee, but it is an extra kind of benefit, an extra boost. If they like your movie, if that's a general Best Picture contender like Hamnet is, we can expect that if everyone else likes Hamnet, that the production designers branch will like Hamnet. In the same way, if the production designers branch, has a film from a past nominee, from someone they respect, they may want to nominate them again because they've done it in the past and they've appreciated their work and they're a fan of their work already. So Hamnet kind of has a lot of things going for it. It's not as big of a production, a big of a scale, but I do think it's going to be a strong Oscar contender. Still, I'm not backing away from that. Like some people are after having seen the film, I still think it's going to do very well at the Oscars, and it will pick up some of these technical categories. And like I want to over-index with one battle after another, I also want to over-index with Hamnet because I do think it is still a kind of 2-3 film race at the top. And then with my fifth prediction, I went with Avatar: Fire and Ash. And like I mentioned with the costume design part of this video, you don't want too much overlap. So I felt odd putting in something like Wicked in this category, for example, just because I wanted to have some less overlap. I didn't want to have it a clear 4 for 5. And Avatar is similarly positioned to Wicked, but I think even if it's, disappointing a bit in terms of its nominations, it's not overly disappointing. It still got in at VFX and score and some of the key categories of the Oscar shortlists. For me, just the way I look at things is, okay, I've never really had it in my Best Picture contention, but is it really going to completely drop off the fact? I mean, the first Avatar won production design. The second Avatar got nominated for production design. Is this third one so bad that it's not even going to get nominated for anything aside from visual effects? I mean, the last one did get nominated for Best Picture and production design and visual effects. Like, is it not going to get anything for the third one? I don't think it's going to be that big of a drop-off. And the fact that the second movie got nominated for production design, I think is notable. I think that that's an element, an aspect of these Avatar films that are well appreciated. This is from the same people that got nominated for that film. So, there's an appreciation there on that side. Ultimately, I looked at my productions and I said, I didn't want as much overlap between the costume design and production design side of things. And I think that Avatar will still get at least a couple of Oscar nominations. I still think that even if the quality isn't amazing, that the overall technical appreciation for Avatar is still very well appreciated, still very well respected, and that will show up at the visual effects category, and I think also here at the production design category. But I mentioned it, my first possible contender is Wicked for Good. Didn't include it, but it's an absolutely very strong possible contender, very similar to Avatar in that sense, in that the first films, blockbuster films, sequels, and the first films in their franchises won for Best Production Design, and now the sequels aren't as well appreciated, which is going to get nominated. And ultimately for me, I did not include Wicked as well, because I think there's some introduction of some new costumes, there's some new great makeup in the second film, but in terms of new locations and new designs, there really isn't as much. When I think about the first film and the production design, I think about the Munchkin Land, and I think about Oz. And then this new film, it's kind of repeating the same locations. It's Munchkin Land, it's Oz. There isn't necessarily new sets to be built within this film, unless I'm kind of forgetting about something. It's kind of repeating a lot of the same locations that they were already in. So I felt that it wasn't maybe as much of a Herculean task here, but it's from Nathan Crowley, who's been nominated 5 times this past decade, if you kind of push that a little bit to something like Interstellar, and won last year. So he is very well respected, and he may be enough of a name and enough of someone that they appreciate. to want to give him a nomination. I just didn't want to have too much left with my costume design category and thought that Avatar would be a little bit more technically well appreciated. And then my other possible contender, I gotta say probably the Phoenician Scheme. Even though Wes Anderson movies don't always do very well, there could be no surprise nomination there. But when I was looking at my contenders, it's like, I'm not going to put One Battle because I have it in for costumes. I'm not going to put The Testament of Van Lee, even though it's a possibility. Maybe that breaks late. And I looked at a lot of the contenders and I went, I'm kind of really happy with my 5 and my 6. So my 7th is a possible contender. You know, if my 6th is really close to those top 5, my 7th is nowhere even close to the rest of them. So you can go with the Phoenician Scheme. You can go with Nuremberg. You can go with One Battle after another. But for me, I really do think that the top 6 are the top 6, and then from here on out, it's anyone's best guess. For me, I went with the Phoenician Scheme just because Adam Stockhausen, Wes Anderson, some past appreciation there. The question is whether or not people will see it, and the Phoenician Scheme doesn't seem like major, well appreciated, acclaimed. And if Asteroid City couldn't get in, why would this movie? This movie's a little bit more expansive in the different sets, and there's more locations than Asteroid City. But maybe there's still not that level of appreciation and taking for granted sometimes of Wes and his films. Then let's talk about the makeup and hairstyling category. My predictions here, starting off with, you guessed it, Frankenstein. Number 1 in all 3 of these categories. I also have it in for makeup and hairstyling. Because just before even the Oscar shortlist came out, I did not have Weapons in for my predictions. Because Weapons was a movie that was about makeup. This is not a makeup category. This makeup category should be renamed. It hasn't been this way for a long time. It is the best prosthetics category. You see the past years, it's all about prosthetics of transforming actors into other people or transforming them into people they don't look like. Brendan Fraser in The Whale, Gary Oldman for Darkest Hour, Christian Bale for Vice. Just go all the way, even to someone like Bradley Cooper in Maestro, Charlize Theron in Bombshell. Let's see if I can really name all of them in the past few years. I mean, Demi Moore for The Substance. There's almost always an actor being transformed with prosthetics. And those are the movies that not only win, but get nominated. But what do we have here with Frankenstein? Jacob Elordi, an actor who is likely to get nominated, at least I think, for Best Supporting Actor, who has a lot of prosthetics on his face. Check and check. Include that. Frankenstein should easily cruise to a nomination here. My second pick would be The Smashing Machine for similar reasons. I don't think The Rock is going to get nominated, Dwayne Johnson, but I do think that it's notable that this was a high-profile star who did transform himself through prosthetics to look like the wrestler Mark Kerr. And when you see the film, particularly in the kind of last third, he looks very different than what The Rock does. And I think that's a testament to the prosthetics work of the film. This is also from makeup artist Kazuhiro, who is essentially the best working makeup artist alive today. His last 3 films, not the last 3 films he got nominated for, just his last 3 films, Darkest Hour, Maestro, Bombshell. And Darkest Hour and Bombshell both won, and all 3 of them got nominated. So now he's got a new film. And pretty much every time he's got a new film, he either wins or gets nominated. So I think this will definitely get nominated here. Like I said, not because necessarily the makeup of Emily Blunt, the prosthetics. The prosthetic work of transforming Dwayne Johnson, a famous person, into someone else, in this case, UFC fighter Mark Kerr. Then my third pick, I went with Wicked for Good. This is one prediction I was confident in, but the fact that it showed up at the shortlist and Wicked overall did very well at the shortlist made me more confident in this prediction from Mark Coulier and Frances Hannon. Mark has won 3 times. Frances has won once for their work, so well respected. I've been showed up multiple times before. Showed up for Wicked last year as well, so I thought that was notable too. Not only do you have the kind of green makeup of Cynthia Erivo, which was done in the first film, you have new makeup, the work that was done prosthetically with the Tin Man, as well as the Scarecrow. Don't want to spoil who those are, but when you actually see their face, it's big close-ups, and there's very detailed and very good work done within the film. So it's not only a continuation of a movie and makeup work that we know they liked for Wicked last year, which got nominated, but then also there's the extension. Also there is the fact that we have new additional prosthetic work, new additional characters that have great makeup work as well. Then my fourth prediction, I went with Sinners, and this is mostly because of, without spoiling anything, Jack O'Connell, his character. There's one kind of moment, particularly the end of the film, where it's all kind of prosthetics and he's kind of all cut up. And then generally the vampires, whether it be kind of their teeth or the kind of drool that they're exhibiting, lots of kind of interesting prosthetic makeup work there. And, I've talked about this many times throughout this video, but it's a Best Picture contender. And I do think that I want to over-index in movies that are just generally well-liked. We see them show up in a lot of these categories. Period piece film as well, so it has that appreciation on the technical side of things. Blockbuster, it has a big budget to have some of these elements. The makeup category in particular has been appreciative of genre films generally, going even back to Rick Baker winning for something like Wolfman in 2010. So I do think that there's a legacy here for these types of horror movies to get nominated, and you have a really strong one in Sinners, so why not here for makeup? And then my final pick, I went with One Battle After Another, which on first blush may not be an obvious pick. And I mentioned it on my shortlist episode where I think it maybe surprised a lot of people. It didn't surprise me. I've had it in my 5, and that's in part because, without spoiling anything, the Sean Penn transformation and the very end of the film. It's a film without not a lot of prosthetics until it does, and it's a very notable, very well done prosthetic where it's close-ups and long aspects of just looking at Sean Penn's character and his face. Arjen Tutin is the, I'm sure I messed up that name, apologies, but he is the makeup artist here for the film that will likely get nominated. He's been nominated twice before, kind of a protege of, people like Rick Baker, and well-respected within the industry, and does a great job at that kind of one moment, and he's very well-respected within the industry. So you have a really strong movie that's really well-liked for Best Picture, with one really distinct prosthetic work from a character that we know is going to get nominated, probably Sean Penn for Best Supporting Actor. That's what we usually see. Last year with Emilia Perez, that surprised a lot of people. That wasn't on anyone's radar. I had it as a possible contender, I think, last year, but it was on no one's radar as a possible kind of nominee for makeup. But got in because it has one distinct prosthetic work for someone, Carlos Sofia Gascon, who got nominated at the Oscars. Similarly here, you have Sean Penn, who I think is going to get nominated at the Oscars. It's not a lot of makeup work, but the makeup work that was done was, very well done and is a transformation of an Oscar-nominated actor. So why not One Battle After Another? Those are my thoughts. Then my other possible contenders here, I have The Ugly Stepsister. That may be a surprise. It was a surprise for me in terms of when I got nominated at the shortlist, but the more work I did, the more research I did, you start to realize that Thomas Folberg, is it? Yes. Was part of the makeup team for Border, which got nominated, and that was a surprise nomination a few years back. We usually see kind of these northeastern European countries do very well. Usually it's the Swedes, whether it be A Man Called Uwe or a 1,000-year-old man or 100-year-old man who jumped out of the window and disappeared, and then Border. These films do very well at the makeup and surprise in the makeup category. The Ugly Stepsister has not as flashy makeup in that sense, but is in that part of the world, Norwegian, not Swedish, but there is a lot of great talent within that part of the world and what they do there, and has been appreciated in the past for the Oscars, so absolutely consider that. And then my other possible contender, I went with Nuremberg, which doesn't have a lot of talent behind it in terms of past nominees or past winners or anything like that, but it does have a transformation in Russell Crowe's character, and it is an actor. Russell Crowe is essentially the co-lead of the film, so the makeup has to be very good and very detailed, and there is a lot of makeup work within the film. The question is, will enough people see it? Will this be a surprise production design makeup nomination on Oscar morning? Maybe. Appeals, I think, definitely to the older members of the Academy. But this was a movie that was very mixed critically, and I don't think it will be in contention for a lot of the different categories. So maybe for makeup, they like to sometimes, they gave it to Suicide Squad, for example. They like to go with movies that aren't critically well acclaimed all the time. But it really is just aside from Russell Crowe's character, that's the only makeup aspect of it. I'm much more confident go with a movie like Sinners or One Battle After Another, which has more a general appreciation as a movie. But that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you comment below, let me know your thoughts on these 3 categories, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss next week's video. But that's about it. Until next time, stay tuned.